A really unfortunately good article today out of Real Clear Defense. President-elect Donald Trump must play nuclear war games. I agree with this. There needs to be a lot more war games, not just nuclear, but the president-elect definitely must have some nuclear war games in this world today. Like I said, Real Clear Defense. President-elect Donald Trump must play nuclear war games. Most of the world's nuclear warheads are under the control of Putin, Xi, Modi, and Kim. 6,302 out of 11,951. That is a lot of nuclear weapons. I know it was a lot more up into the 70,000 range, but that's still a lot. The rise of populist authoritarian states puts a premium on the juncture of interpersonal skills, transcultural awareness, and technical knowledge of the retaliatory options by the U.S. president. If American leadership does not appear entirely resolute in its intentions to respond proportionately and promptly to even the smallest nuclear attack against its interests and allies under the nuclear umbrella, then there will be a tangible risk of a new round of nuclear proliferation. The Pentagon must make it a priority to involve President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance in a series of intensive war games to deal with this almost inevitable retaliation and escalation that will result from the use of nuclear weapons. I agree with this. I completely agree with this. I am absolutely for more wargaming. The more sweat and peace, the less blood and war. And the more times we can run scenarios, the better. The better. The current administration has left this nation with a real problem on its hands. We're looking at nuclear proliferation with Iran, the possible use of nuclear weapons from Russia in Ukraine. We know the Chinese are only growing their arsenal. The Indians and the Pakistanis currently are virtually in the middle of a revolution as we speak. Today is the 26th of November, 2024. And they are in the midst of almost a revolution. What happens if their nuclear weapons fall in the hands of radical terrorists? Then are we going to get involved? Would this administration get involved? That's a question I think is even more relevant. Because as I read this article here, they talk about Putin's threatened use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine was deterred more by uncertainty than assumption of a near automatic response by the Joseph Biden administration. There's so much questioning of the current administration, of its resolve, of its will to do anything more than basically take money, which seems to be really what they want to do, is just sell arms. They're willing to fight in Ukraine to the last Ukrainian. They're willing to give Israel as much as they need. This is really the war administration. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Another part of the article I really enjoyed. Annie Jacobson's best-selling and horrifying 2024 account of a nuclear exchange entitled Nuclear War, A Scenario, was generally poorly received by professionals in the strategic deterrence business because of its extreme oversimplification of U.S. warfighting capabilities. What do they want? Do they want her to literally list every single capability in detail? I don't think so. That book was wonderful and frightening. If you haven't had the opportunity to read that book, I highly suggest it. Again, Annie Jacobson's Nuclear War, A Scenario. It's also available on Audible. I highly recommend it. The book is legitimately nightmarish in many ways. I'm going to continue with a small portion of this paragraph just to kind of make a point. However, it is a decent simulation of how nuclear war would look if conducted by unfettered authoritarians and poorly prepared democratic leaders. None of the aforementioned rulers have had the politico-military training to manage the almost impossible challenge of arresting nuclear escalation. As John F. Kennedy discovered during the Cuban Missile Crisis, commanding nuclear weapons is very different from the routine of politics on the Hill, navigating communist political committees or directing the Silvoisky to loot a post-totalitarian society. The president had no simulation of this in 1962. He had no simulation of this. There was no war games that ended in a blockade of Cuba. That was literally almost a throw-out suggestion based on previous wargaming in the Pentagon. Literally almost a throwaway suggestion that saved the world. A throwaway suggestion that literally saved the world. It's amazing because this current administration has, again, put us in a situation where the use of nuclear weapons, the proliferation of nuclear weapons right now, as we speak, is, in my opinion, the greatest threat to humans on the planet. We are so close to its use, and you cannot put that genie back in the bottle. You cannot put that genie back in the bottle. It's impossible. It was put away once because we were the only ones who had it at that time, and we put it away. It can't happen again. It can't happen again, and it won't. If it happens, other nations will immediately feel justified in doing the exact same thing. Doesn't matter who that nation is that starts it. Immediately other nations will follow suit. India, Pakistan. They've had a grudge going back. What century is it now? Russia, Ukraine, North, South Korea, Israel. Perhaps Iran finds it. Maybe Japan decides to do it. Japan could have like a nuclear weapon, by 7 o'clock. Nuclear proliferation is at a tipping point. We can't allow it to go over the edge. Another brief thing from this article. Another important purpose of a large U.S. nuclear arsenal is general deterrence, where a major power like the U.S. has such an impressive stockpile that it discourages smaller countries from even conceiving of competition in trying to possess nuclear weapons. This is certainly the case of Brazil, South Korea, Germany, and Japan, which depends on the U.S.'s security umbrella. Japan has been moving out of that security umbrella and finding itself again. They just recommissioned 2 destroyers as 2 aircraft destroyers. They're essentially small aircraft carriers that are rated to handle the F-35. There was just a recent article about them conducting flight tests off the coast of San Diego, certifying their landing crews, the ships, for the eventual arrival of their F-35s, which they have purchased and are on order. Continuing. General deterrence is vital to U.S.'s grand strategy because proliferation would increase the likelihood of regional nuclear wars, which would instigate further proliferation, which in turn would block U.S. intervention against rogue states. I think this is kind of an important part for people who ever wonder what our grand strategy is. Because the grand strategy of the English Empire, everybody knew, and that's what it was called, the grand strategy, the great game. Well, this is ours. General deterrence thereby facilitates the U.S.'s 3 grand strategic objectives. First, enable global maritime commerce to generate middle classes that promote development and democracy, which leads to peace, since liberal democracies do not go to war with one another. Which is true. Liberal democracies do not go to war with one another. Liberal not meaning in the left wing, liberal meaning in the traditional liberal. Therefore, second, spread democracy faster than the proliferation of nuclear weapons. That one's kind of... Third, resist any attempt to unite the Eurasian landmass under a single, non-democratic authority. Well, the current administration has done everything it can to make that a reality for us to have to deal with. The Eurasian landmass has never been more unified. Look at China. Look at Russia. Iran. Syria. I mean, Afghanistan is a lost cause, but you can basically say that as a rogue state, it's not on our side. Pakistan in the middle of, like I said previously, riots, virtually in the middle of a revolution right now. This administration, the Joe Biden administration, has done more to unite the Eurasian landmass than any president in our country's history. So of our 3 global grand strategic objectives there, number 3, he's done everything in his power to make happen at our detriment. It's a good article. I'll of course link it in the description. Thank you.